Welcome to United Way Community Connections. We're glad you joined us and hope that you will learn something today and we'll be able to give you some information maybe you didn't know before. My guest today is a newcomer to Paducah, Glenda Adkisson, who is the Executive Director of the American Red Cross here in Paducah. Glenda, welcome to Paducah.
Thank you very much.
And what brought you here, and let's just give a little background about who you are and why you're in Paducah.
Okay. Actually, we moved in our home in May, so we are pretty new. And we moved here from Columbus, Ohio. My husband actually accepted a position with the Paducah Sun, and so we came down. And then I started with the Red Cross mid-June.
So you just jumped right into it then.
I did. My husband's family, some of his family lives in southeast Missouri, and so this was a nice opportunity to be closer to family. And of course, when we moved to Paducah, just the town itself and all there is to offer in Paducah was a big draw for us.
What drew you to Red Cross? I can understand the Paducah part of it. I think everybody knows that. But why were you interested in being with Red Cross?
I have a healthcare background. I was a school nurse in Texas for many years, and then I was the health services coordinator and director of special programs at a college in Virginia. And in that capacity, I worked not for the Red Cross, but with the Red Cross on a number of events, and just saw what they had done, what their mission was, and years ago actually was very interested in working with the Red Cross in particular. So whenever I came here and I saw this opportunity, this was something that I just knew I had to pursue.
Well, we're glad that you did.
Well, thank you.
I know your job was open at the Red Cross, and being new in town, I'm just really glad that you did apply and got that job, because I think you bring a new perspective to an organization. And of course, United Way and Red Cross go back a lot of years, and as a partner agency of United Way, we've been very involved in the workings of the Red Cross, the volunteers, and that sort of thing, and with the staffing there. Tell me, Glenda, what your changes that you see need to be made, maybe your hopes and your dreams for moving forward, and then we'll talk some about what you're doing now, and maybe some of the aspects of Red Cross that folks don't really know that much about.
I'd love to, and because there are so many things that are going on with the Red Cross. The Red Cross does so much in this community and things that are not necessarily seen by the public. So that is something that we're working on, is doing a better job of getting the message out there about what we are doing. Certainly there are things that go on in the community on a daily basis. We are working in the community and offer services to the citizens of the Paducah area.
Well, the latest one good example would be the cooling place.
The cooling center, yes.
At Broadway Methodist Church.
Right, and we had that going on last week and this week. And cooling centers are interesting, as are shelters. For example, shelters, even if you have a tornado or a hurricane come through, most of the time, if someone needed a place to stay, if they have the option of staying with family, that's where most people want to be. But you will have a number of people that maybe their family doesn't live in the area, or for whatever reason, they have nowhere else that they can go. We had a person come by the other day that their air conditioner had just gone out at their house. Well, it takes some time to get someone there, and so just having a place to go cool off was certainly beneficial, and there are people that do not have anywhere else to go. So we were able to assist.
Is that a first for Paducah?
I'm not sure. If you look at the long history of the Red Cross in this area, I would say it's probably not, because we have been here 90 years. And what I do see, and if I can give you just a little bit of history here, and then I think I can, from that, go into really what what we see as our future,
All right, let's
and what
do
we're
that
doing
then.
now. Because Paducah has such a spot in the history of the American Red Cross. Of course, Clara Barton founded the American Red Cross back in 1881, and this was a phenomenal woman. Clara Barton was just the most interesting lady. Back in 1860, I think it was 1869, she was working with the in Washington, D.C., and it was back during the Civil War, and started seeing the need among the military, the soldiers, and that they didn't have enough food, they didn't have enough clothing, and she was a very compassionate lady. So what she did is she started gathering supplies herself and working with some other women, and as we know, often women getting together to get a lot done.
That's for sure.
and so she did. She got supplies out to people and really had a heart for this. This I thought was very interesting. 1 month before Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, he wrote a note and said to those people, and I'm not saying the exact quote, but basically he said to those people with missing soldiers, I suggest you write to Clara Barton, because she has been gracious enough to work on getting that communication, which of course years later has led to our military services. But the American Red Cross has roots back to Abraham Lincoln and the Civil War.
That's a long time.
It is a long time.
And I think it's a good story that,
yes,
that folks don't know.
No, and she later went to England and found out about of course this was before the American Red Cross. She went to England, read a book, and found out about the gentleman that had started the Red Cross movement. And his idea was to push forward the idea that we take care of the sick and wounded during wartime, regardless of their nationality. So with that, she came back to the United States and through a chain of events started the American Red Cross. The first flood relief operation that the American Red Cross ever had was in Paducah. That is when Clara Barton came to Paducah, and she came here in 1864, whenever they had a flood here. Of course, a few years later, in 1917, is actually when the first, the McCracken County, as it was called at that point in time, was started. And by some visionaries here in Paducah, which I have found out there are quite a few, and we still have those today. But through the years, the McCracken County, which is now called the Paducah Area Chapter of the American Red Cross, has been very involved with floods and in the services that we provide, which are now, of course, we have the blood center. And most people know about the blood center because we are out.
That's what you hear. Is
that's
the blood
right.
center.
We are
And
out
that's
doing.
not you.
Well, it is our organization. I do not work at the blood center. Because it is blood, they have very specific guidelines and they operate very specifically. And of course, at the blood center, they have blood drives and people can go and donate blood, which we always need donors. And very important service. At 232 North 8th Street, which is at the corner of 8th and Monroe, is our chapter office. Now, out of the chapter office, we have the services of disaster, health and safety, and our military services. Basically, it's this: we help educate people on how to prevent disasters, how to stay healthy. We help them prepare for that, and we also respond to disasters. So that is something that people sometimes hear about. If there's a hurricane, if there is a tornado,
they hear about that.
If
yes,
a bridge collapses,
exactly. Yes,
they hear that because it makes national news. Certainly, we're part of that. Mm-hmm. What they sometimes do not hear about are those daily disasters that we respond to. Home fires, individual single-family fires are the number one thing that we deal with. To give you an idea, in the last 2.5 weeks, we have responded to 5 fires, single-family fires. We help them basically get through that first 72 hours. Whether someone has homeowners insurance or not, it's not going to take care of them in that first 72 hours.
That's exactly right.
Because if, let's say that the fire starts in the middle of the night, which sometimes that is what happens, because if you're awake during the day, you're more likely to smell fire, smell the smoke, or hear or see things. But if you're asleep, sometimes you don't. Well, what happens is they may not have anywhere to stay that night. They may not have gotten out with anything other than clothing.
You know, we don't think of fires in the summertime as much as we do in the wintertime. What has been the cause of so many in such a short time?
So, you know, it's been various things, but a couple of them have been cooking fires. And one thing that has really come to light with me, I think in a more specific way, is how fast home fires spread. We've had several people that have said that as they come into our office, oh, it just went so fast. One thing that I really want to encourage everyone to do is be prepared. Get a smoke detector. Please check the batteries. We had one of our clients that came and spoke to our group of volunteers a couple of weeks ago and just simply shared his story. And he kept saying, a battery saved my life. And that's true. A battery. Simply checking the battery on that smoke detector, because it was 1:30 a.m. when the fire started. In his situation, it was the hot water heater.
So it can be anything. It's not just your winter heating, your heaters,
it can be anything.
that sort of thing. And we tend to think that's what it's going to be. In the wintertime, you're going to have more.
Exactly. Cooking. A couple of them have been from cooking. And the thing is, often people do not have a fire extinguisher. So, you know, if they have a fire extinguisher, certainly they can take care of some of those things. But the main thing is getting out. And that is one thing. I spoke with our fire marshal, and he was emphasizing the fact that between feeling normal, being able to breathe well, in a smoke-filled room, you have about 3 or 4 inhalations before you're going to lose consciousness. It's not. And people think, oh, well, I'll just try to do this and take care of this. If they're not careful, they may lose consciousness before they have time to get out. But fires are certainly something very important that we take care of on a daily basis, certainly tornadoes, but there are a lot of things that we do.
What do you do exactly for a family that has a fire, say?
Well,
kind of walk us through the,
we have a DAT
the process.
Team. It is a disaster action team. It's called DAT. We have volunteers, and I will tell you that we have wonderfully dedicated volunteers. When I tell you what some of these people do, you will have a greater appreciation for volunteers. Not all of our volunteers are on the DAT, but those that are sign up to be on call. They are on call on the evenings and weekends, so that if disaster strikes, if there is a home fire, we're not just making sure they have a place to stay, because sometimes you could do that over the phone. The fact is, if someone is standing out in front of their home, watching it go up in flames, first of all, they may or may not have gotten out with clothing. They may or may not have had shoes. It makes all the difference in the world if you can be there and simply wrap a blanket around their shoulders and say, we're going to help you with this. We're going to help you get through this. We have people to be on call to do that, but we make sure they have somewhere to stay that night for the immediate emergency needs. Do they have clothing? We give them actually money for clothing. We pay for their hotel sometimes. Well, most of the time, unless they had, maybe mom lives down the road and they have somewhere else they want to stay, we'll take care of immediate shelter, food, clothing. Those
and you don't give them
needs. Cash.
You mean a voucher? Is that
a voucher, or we have actually a client assistance cards. There's a set amount that we can do per person, and some of those things are based on their immediate needs. So we take care of those, and those volunteers sign up to do that. To give you an idea, just in the past 2 weeks, the financial assistance that have gone to the families in the past couple of weeks with fires is between $4,000 and $5,000, and those cases are not closed yet. So there will be
Could
additional
be other
expenses.
needs.
Yes, there will be additional expenses for those before we complete those. So that is a big thing that we do.
And I think folks in the community may realize that to an extent, but fires are no respecter of persons, whether
That's
they're
right.
rich, poor, in between, it doesn't matter. I mean, it can happen to any of us at any time. And I think as much as anything else, to have that assurance, you're not out there alone. And that's what the Red Cross does in working collaboration with other agencies, with other organizations, because you all could not possibly, I would think, meet all of the needs a family might have. There
Right.
are others who have that available, maybe the clothing and that sort of thing. So
Yeah,
I think
we
that
do
is
refer.
important in the referrals.
Right. And that is a very important part of what we do. This is one thing that, as far as my dream of what we do and what we do better, is networking with the other agencies in the community, churches in the community. There are a lot of people that have services, for example, clothing. We refer to the Salvation Army, to family services. There are a lot of agencies, and we refer people every day. Every day, I would say, on average, at least one a day. We do referrals to other agencies because since we are looking at the first 72 hours, primarily as far in a fire situation, it takes much longer than that to recover.
Oh, surely it
if
does.
someone does
you
not
have
have-
children, you have school
Absolutely.
supplies that probably
Right.
are lost. All of these things that we take for granted
We really
sometimes,
do.
that it's going to be there when we get up in the morning or when we come home in the evenings.
Right.
So I think that is an important part of what Red Cross does, and I know that there's so many more things, and I know the military, you mentioned that. Let's talk about, because I think that is something that is in all of our minds right now, is how do you serve the military families?
Well, this is another area that is little known, and another area that we want to increase our services. And we are looking for volunteers. I will tell you, we are looking for volunteers that are passionate about helping in this area. What we do is primarily reconnect families in crisis situation. Now, we do a lot of communication. Of course, we are commissioned by Congress to do this. Let's say that someone is deployed and they are in Iraq, and their family has an emergency situation going on. They go through the American Red Cross to make that connection. As you might understand, in the military, there's so much going on. Sometimes communications can be slowed a little bit.
Yes.
When the Red Cross gets involved, it happens very quickly. Now, one thing I don't think that people understand is that this is community funded. The American Red Cross is very grateful to the United Way because they are our #1 donor. But we are community supported. It takes the United Way and it takes our regular donors to be able to fund these things. The Red Cross we do not get funds from the National Red Cross. In fact, we have an assessment that goes to the National Red Cross. But the support we get from National is very, very important. We get assistance from National. In fact, we have a disaster trailer right now that comes from National, and if we have a national disaster, they come in and underwrite that, the cost of everything, should we have an earthquake here, for example. But these military communications are one of the things that is something that it is an expense to have that done, but it is so wonderful to see these families that perhaps they've got a tragedy, perhaps they've got someone very, very ill and they need to be home, then you can help them do that. What we want to do is expand that. When we have troops coming in, we want to be at the airport. We want to have a group of people to be there, to see them off, to expand those services, and we will be hopefully working with volunteers that want to be part of that.
Okay. Coming in new to a 90-year-old organization, what would be your largest dream, maybe, of what this chapter could be?
Well, this chapter has, for the last few years, I think, not been as connected with the community as
You're
we
absolutely
can be.
right, yes.
And I want to see it there again. We have been in the past. Right after Pearl Harbor, between 41 and 45, this chapter raised over $1 million, and that is back in the 40s. That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money for this
Did
community.
aid. I do want to tell you, and I want to invite everyone to go down Broadway. At the corner of Broadway and 2nd, there is a sign that talks about Clara Barton coming to Paducah. At Broadway and about 4th or 5th, somewhere right in there, it talks about all the floods, the tornadoes, the disasters, all the things that the people in this community got behind the Red Cross, and that was just part of what they did. And it is still, we still have some wonderful, dedicated donors that are regular, consistent donors. And what we are looking to do is get a Red Cross Youth Club or a Junior Red Cross Club, which they had one here years ago.
They did. My neighbor said that she was involved in it and years ago, and wondered why we don't have one now, because our children, our young people, I can remember when I was in elementary school, and that's been a long time ago, getting the little tabs that you put on your lapel and being a part of the Junior Red Cross, and
Right.
and that was in a rural school. So I would hope that can be established in Paducah area again, because
yes.
I think it would be a wonderful way for our children and our young people to give back to the community.
Well, to give back to the community and educating them, we have a complete curriculum called Masters of Disaster, and it helps make the kids more aware of how to prevent, how to live safely. Just let it be part of your life. Just safe habits. You know, we have certain habits, and hopefully in driving we have safe habits. Some of us do, some of us may not, but we hope that children will begin to have safe habits, and Masters of Disaster teaches them those things.
Okay. All right, speaking of disaster, I know you've brought some interesting things with us. If you want to show them now and talk about
Certainly.
what you have
Certainly,
and what makes
I
up
would.
a disaster.
You know, September is National Preparedness Month, and there are certain things that we take, you know, as you mentioned before, we take certain things for granted, and most of us kind of look at, you know, some of these things and think, okay, that's being a little overly dramatic. But the fact is that FEMA, the National Red Cross, there will be help if we were to have a large-scale disaster in this area, which we have a number in this area. But that takes time. During those first few hours after a disaster, it is our responsibility to prepare to take care of ourselves a little while, because it's not going to be immediate. And that's something that just having these things on hand are so important.
All right, let's look at them then.
We have brochures, and we have these at the Red Cross office, and it's called Be Red Cross Ready. It's a very simple 3-step program, and basically it is this. Number 1, get a kit. Number 2, make a plan. And number 3, be informed. So I want to talk about these things one at a time. And again, that's get a kit, make a plan, and be informed. Be Red Cross ready. Okay, I brought a kit to show you just a little bit. This is something that is very easy. You fix it one time, and you have it available should something happen and you need to get out of the house immediately. There are certain things that you may need. And I'll show you just some things. Number 1, you may need some cash. Oh. If something were to happen that you could not go to the ATM, which most of us live by debit cards now, you might need some cash. A radio with some batteries that are fresh. First aid kit. Extra clothing for children. Some water, some food, some of those things. Some things that people may not think about, pet food. You know what, if you get your dog out of your house, might be helpful if you had some pet food in there or cat food, whatever. So that's important. So that is make a kit. They are available through the Red Cross, and certainly the information on what you would put in there is available. Make a plan. Now this is important. If people are talking about fires, it is so important that you have a place outside of the home where you know you're going to meet. Hey, we'll meet at the tree in front of the house, because if your home's on fire, you don't want people going back in and trying to find each other. Or having a place out of town that they can call. Say, call grandmom. Sometimes it's easier to call long distance than it is in town. And then look at what we are likely to have in this area. Flood, possibly tornadoes, earthquake. Those are all things that are could happen in this area, and find out what you do in that type of situation. For example, not driving through water, those kinds of things. So get informed. Again, get a kit, make a plan, and be informed.
That sounds very simple, and most of us don't do it. So all of this then, are the kits already at the Red Cross, or do you put your own?
You can put them together, and we do have some for sale. We've got a 3-day supply that's already put together, and the deluxe, kits in the 60s, and then there are some that are less, but you can put your own together, and we have the information there too.
But those are the things that, and I hadn't thought about the cash, but yes,
Right.
You'd be desperate for
Right.
something if you left
And the
particularly
ATM's
in the
not
middle of the
working.
night.
Exactly.
That's exactly right. We have just a few minutes to wrap up, and we'll get back to your dreams in just about in a moment. If you can tell me, what do you want to do here? What changes, what foundation other than 90 years of history has been laid for you?
Well, certainly becoming, as I said, getting more engaged with the community. The Junior Red Cross, we want to see that up running and strong. We want to have more health and safety and preparedness, whether it is lifeguard training or water safety. Those are things we want to bring those programs back and bring strength to those programs, and just do a better job of delivering our services and do a better job of communicating what we're doing with the community.
And I think that's the key too, and this is one of the things that we're doing right now, is communicating to the community. And
we appreciate you inviting us to be part of this show, and we certainly appreciate all that United Way does to help the American Red Cross.
Well, we have had a long history also with the Red Cross and other organizations, and that's what we do, and that's what we do best, I guess. And we're just glad that you are here, and the Red Cross is here, and maybe you've stimulated some thought on volunteering and maybe getting us prepared. And
yes,
I think that's important
if people
for us.
would put us in their budget and just donate on a regular basis, that would make
We're
a
always
tremendous
needing
difference.
donations
Absolutely,
and volunteers.
and volunteers.
Yes. And now then, we have to wrap up. It ends too quickly sometime. And Glenda, we're glad you're in Paducah.
Thank
and
you.
glad the Red Cross is alive and well. And we look forward to a lot of good things
I
happening.
feel honored to be part of it.
Thank you very much. We
Thanks.
appreciate that. Thank you for joining us for United Way